Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us here for Saturday's show. Looking at the warning advisories, there's still the frost advisory again tonight for the central Tanana Valley. This morning temperatures fell as low as 22 degrees at the Gold Stream observing site there, and expected to fall back again tonight into the 20s to lower to mid 30s. Once again tonight, so that frost advisory out at least for one more night there in the central Tanana Valley around Fairbanks. Yesterday we had a lot of moisture front right through here moving eastward across the state. That brought all the rain in late Thursday night, Friday morning across south central Alaska, and then all shifted eastward, Copper River Basin, along the North Gulf Coast, all the way up there into the Arctic. And the colder temperatures behind, a little more showery, as well as some sunshine breaking out, and then a lot more moisture moving in from the northwest under good northwest winds aloft back into the western Arctic coast. One system here moving into the southeast coast, right off the coast, brought the gusty winds yesterday morning, and the rain just about all day, although turning more showery, but troughs back out here to the west, moving in, and then another surge of moisture coming across from the Bering Sea in across toward the Gulf of Alaska, and another system back through here with a fair amount of moisture down in this area, bringing some rain up into the eastern Aleutians. And that today, right in there, brought pretty good rainfall to the Alaska Peninsula, as much as 0.8 of an inch falling at Nelson Lagoon. Most of that fell in 6 hours today as this thing pulled through this morning. Late last night and this morning with rainfall up to the northeast. About a third of an inch fell in Dutch Harbor when that moved through there. And then Alaska, this coming southeastward, again the flow coming down from the north and northwest. So all of this moisture kind of getting organized and moving down to the southeast. Lots of sunshine today over the southwest interior. Some of this moisture did clip Cape Newnham, Cape Constantine there, but was mostly slid off south of Kodiak Island, but coming back up into the Gulf, and you can see the clear area here becoming narrower as the last band of shower is slowing down, but the speed of this cloud mass coming in kind of putting a squeeze on the dry slot there. But the shower should just about completely taper off tonight for the southeast coast and get some clearing periods, but this area of rain will be right up to the coastline by tomorrow morning. Had some isolated thunderstorms, really hit and miss around the state today, nothing widespread at all. And the scattered showers continuing, kind of the remnants of that frontal boundary, keeping a showery over this Copper River Basin, but drying out here up in the interior. A lot of sunshine down through the Susitna Valley, Kenai Peninsula, back out to the west, breaking out again there in northeast Bristol Bay, and then a couple of troughs coming down from the northwest there, bringing the rain and snow showers, heaviest back to the northwest, and a little heavier, about ½ inch of rainfall falling at Nome in the last 24 hours, and Kotzebue picked up about 0.13 of an inch, which is quite a pickup from what they had yesterday, and this whole pattern will continue for at least another day or so. But we'll be watching some moisture coming up from the west-southwest. But for tonight, again, showers in, possibly some clearing this evening, and then increasing clouds toward morning with rain approaching the coastline by early morning. And again, a couple of troughs coming in from the northwest there. So more snow, gusty southwest winds at times tonight for the western Arctic coast. Rain and snow showers into the interior. Of course, in the Brooks Range, that'll be snow. And then kind of a mixture, but pretty light precipitation-wise in through this area back to St. Lawrence Island. And then just some variable cloudiness with patchy fog, areas of drizzle out over the Aleutians, but for the most part dry. Light northwest winds and mostly clear there, Kodiak Island. Skies should clear out. High pressure centered over the western Aleutians. Looks like it will more or less hold in that area there. Westerly wind flow across the Bering Sea. That's going to push a warm front to about this position tomorrow afternoon, and with it southwest winds that'll begin to increase the clouds and produce some marginal to IFR flying conditions with fog, light rain or drizzle developing. Still cold enough to hold on to some rain and snow showers up there over the northwest, and mostly cold enough to keep it in the form of snow on the Arctic coast there. Occasionally those winds kicking up 20 gusts 30 miles an hour at times, but basically less than that. And these troughs kind of weaken as they push off to the east there, so just some scattered rain and snow showers coming over to the eastern Alaska, eastern Brooks Range area and Arctic coast, but staying pretty good. Sunshine here from the Kuskokwim Valley all the way down into the Kenai Peninsula, Prince William Sound, mostly sunny skies tomorrow. Still some isolated shower activity here with the leftover moisture, mostly along the eastern Alaska range, probably down to the Talkeetnas, but this system bringing the small craft advisory winds back into the coast, possibly as high as 30 knots there on the south coast, and 25 knots up to about the central coast, but definitely rain periods of tomorrow for the entire stretch of the Panhandle here, including Yakutat, possibly briefly heavy at times over the southern areas. And moving along to Monday, well, that system moves through, but we have an upper level low still off the coast there. So after that system moves through tomorrow evening, there'll be bands of showers forming out here in the Gulf of Alaska, and then that southwest wind flow will carry them right on in through Monday, and probably take until Monday night for this to move through, at which time the showers will end. So Tuesday will be drier. Get back into this air mass back through here moving in. Otherwise, sunshine, Kodiak Island, all of the Pacific side of the Alaska Peninsula with some variable low clouds and fog on the Bering Sea side, and then a pretty significant frontal system moving into the northwest interior again. A lot of moisture sliding northeastward ahead of that in association with the warm front, and some lingering showers back down to the southwest mountains here. But for the most part, that'll push right up to the Alaska range, so look for some rain to spread into the McGrath, Nikolai area, and of course back to the northwest. Showers possibly into the central Tanana Valley, staying west of Fairbanks, and then that whole area extending to the north there. And again, head of the front warmer, more likely seeing rain. Behind the front, the colder air coming in again, so that'll change over to snow with the falling freezing levels. Looks like a band of rain back out across St. Lawrence Island. Pretty good westerly flow out here over the Bering Sea, but that'll keep the conditions low in along the coast. Marginal VFR, patchy IFR, especially out in this area here, but high pressure, light winds, and dry weather will continue for the eastern Aleutians and actually all the way back to the west. Temperatures today along the southeast coast were generally in the upper 50s to lower 60s, but there was a 55 at Sitka, 53 over at Yakutat. They only picked up 0.18 of an inch of rain today, as opposed to, by comparison, Cordova getting a little over an inch. 57 in Valdez this afternoon. Much cooler, 48 degrees in McCarthy. Same thing in Northway, 54 at Gulkana. 58 Anchorage, and a 59 down at Kenai. 56 in Kodiak. 57 up in the valley there at Talkeetna. And 52 Fairbanks. 45 at Delta. Tanana a little cooler at 47. And on up to the north, 39 Anaktuvik, and a 48. Kind of a common temperature for Fort Yukon, Eagle down to Northway, and of course McCarthy. Lower to mid 40s on the eastern Arctic coast, upper 30s on the central and west side, back into the 40s over the northwest interior, and a 42 at Nome, 48 St. Michael and Unalakleet, 52 Amonic, 51 at St. Mary's, and a 52 also at Macoriac. Upper 40s, St. Lawrence Island into the Bering Strait, Teller 47. Mid to upper 50s for the Pribilofs, mid 50s for all of the Aleutians, although warmer here, upper 50s for the Unalaska area and the Alaska Peninsula. For the lows tonight, upper 40s to lower 50s for the southeast coast, mostly into the 20s again in the central interior. That'll extend up to the Arctic coast. Will be mostly in the 30 to 35 degree range, and again, those winds, cloud cover, keeping it at or above freezing. Especially down here from Cape Lisburne on down into Kotzebue Sound. Significantly milder there, and even 30s to lower 40s here for the southwest coast. For the highs tomorrow, mostly in the 50s here over south central Alaska, pushing up towards 60, and upper 50s to lower 60s for the southeast coast, and mostly in the 40s there for the Arctic coast and North Slope areas. And then kind of recovering on the temperatures here as the wind flow becomes more west southwest instead of north northwest. Otherwise, 50s out over the Bering Sea and the Aleutians, upper 50s through the Alaska Peninsula. Flying weather, good VFR, lots of VFR here from Bristol Bay, the Alaska Peninsula, right into the Gulf of Alaska and northward. Still some lingering marginal VFR here with the southeast. Early on, that may clear out by the afternoon. Definitely will decrease, but kind of hang on to the Wrangell Mountains. IFR, southern southeast coast early, and kind of an area up through here as the last of the troughs begin to move through. Actually, that'll be tonight, and then this actually associated with the front coming in tomorrow. Areas IFR out over the Bering Sea and up across St. Lawrence Island with increasing westerly flow. That's going to bring this area inland and push it at least to the Yukon Delta coast, Nunivak Island areas, maybe a little farther inland during the morning hours. Otherwise, passes looking pretty good. Not too bad for Adigan, occasionally marginal, and Anaktuvik, occasionally marginal. Adigan, though, start out VFR and become marginal VFR. And actually 19 degrees recorded at Adigan Pass was the cold spot in the state this morning. And for Lake Clark and Merrill passes, VFR either approach tomorrow, open for rainy, windy open. And Isabel, occasionally marginal VFR, possibly improving in the afternoon. Same thing for Mentasta, marginal VFR, possibly becoming VFR in the afternoon. But Tanita and Portage all open. Chilkoot and White, marginal VFR. Freezing levels showing kind of a trough right through here, 2,000 to 4,000 up to 6,000 feet down around Kodiak Island. Then you can see the warmer air beginning to bulge eastward here across the northern Bering Sea, looking at about 6,000 feet or so for the southeast coast. And icing, none out here to the west at all, and could see some areas of mixed icing up here, 2,000 to 6,000 feet, with those troughs coming onto the northwest coast and then dissipating out as they press east and southeast into the Brooks Range. And then with the front coming in, occasional moderate icing possible, all above 6,000 to 8,000 feet. And winds aloft, jet stream still south of the area here. Here's an upper trough coming through, and that's being replaced eventually with this higher pressure here edging its way eastward, and that'll bring that westerly flow right into the west coast. At 9,000 feet, west-northwest winds, 15 to 25 knots through this area, more westerly cutting into the northern interior, up to 35 knots there, Kotzebue Sound, the Kobuk Valley, and possibly as high as 40 knots on the western and central Arctic coast. Lighter winds over the Aleutians with high pressure and southwesterlies, 25 to 35 knots over the northeast Pacific. High pressure, light winds here, Aleutians, Bering Sea, northern Bering Strait areas, westerlies 20 to 25, and westerlies at about 35 coming onto the west coast up there in the northwest coast, taking a turn to the southwest here at about 30 knots, diminishing as you get south of the Brooks Range, but still 20 knots here from the central interior, say around Bettles, back on out across the Seward Peninsula. 35 knot winds here along the southeast coast, again in advance of that front, in a narrow band here, kind of angling back up toward Cape Yakataga. And turbulence-wise, moderate chop here from about Yakutat and along the coast right down to the Queen Charlotte Islands with less turbulence inland, smooth right through this area, occasional moderate chop, the western North Slope, central and western Arctic coast, a breakthrough here, then some more turbulence of the light to isolated moderate varieties reaching the Nunivak Island areas, Yukon Delta coast, and St. Lawrence Island, possibly over to Nome and Tin City. And after the break, I'll be back with a look at the marine forecasts.
Hello everyone and welcome to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm Jim Peranto. Each year, Alaska's coastal areas are battered by storms that produce strong winds and large waves. Some of these storms can cause significant damage as their related storm surges punish Alaska's coasts. Here today to discuss storm surges is Sam Albanese, the warning coordination meteorologist at the Anchorage Forecast Office. Welcome into the studio today, Sam.
Thanks for having me, Jim.
What time of year are storm surges most likely to occur?
Well, the favorable time of year is the fall storm season, basically late August, September, October into November, before you have your ice pack developed on the Bering Sea, and it's just when we start to see those strong storms first starting to materialize after the summer.
What regions of the state are most vulnerable to these types of events?
Well, essentially, you start from the Bristol Bay region and go up the Bering Sea coast up to the Seward Peninsula, and that's the most predominant region where we do see these storm surges. They can happen in other parts of the state, but that's where it's most likely to be the biggest impact.
So you're typically going to see a big storm move into the Bering Sea, and then it's going to be on that southern side of the low probably, right?
Yeah, that's correct. The southern side of the low, or where you have a long fetch, could be on the east side of the low. If the low moves pretty far north through the Bering Sea up through the Bering Strait, that's when that Nome area, Seward Peninsula, really tends to see a significant surge.
And what happens when you have the ice pack coming down and you have a storm surge? Does that protect the coastal areas in some way, or is...
Not really. Some people would think it does, but essentially the benefit of the ice pack is that it will dampen the development of the surge, or the continued development of the surge, because when the wind's blowing over the ice pack, you don't build up your swell. But when that surge is developing outside the ice pack and transfers into it, well, then it's just a transfer of momentum. The ice pack rides up and down on that swell, kind of like that onion skin type of an analogy, where it really doesn't do a lot other than to mitigate the continued development of the surge.
I'm reminded of that video. Was it in the Pribilof Islands when the Coast Guard was rescuing?
Oh yeah,
it
just
the
throws
famous
the ice
one with
around.
the captain and his crew.
Well, one of the big famous storm surge cases was up in Nome, where there was blocks of ice thrown up onto Front Street, and
Wow.
you're talking car-sized blocks of ice. So the ice pack doesn't really do a lot to dampen the surge significantly. Once it's developed, it floats on the water.
Is the storm surge associated with these Alaskan storms, are they similar to what a hurricane storm surge is like?
In a way they are, except for the fact that a hurricane is a tropical storm, where we're dealing with extratropical storms, and but the mechanism that's driving it, long fetch, strong wind, that's very similar in that, and you build up a big swell that impacts the coastal areas.
Now, what should people do to prepare for this type of event?
Well, first off, know where the danger areas are, what areas are prone to storm surge, historically, and then take the precautions necessary. If you're involved in the fishing industry, if you have a fish camp in an area that's prone to a storm surge, move your gear and your stuff out of the way so that it isn't going to be impacted by the storm surge. But really, it's critical just understanding what the danger areas are and making sure that your property is not in an area where it could be damaged.
Where will people get the notifications and warnings for
from the
coastal
Weather Service.
flooding? Okay.
From the Weather Service. We issue the warnings for that. The coastal storm surge flood warnings come from the Anchorage Forecast Office or the Fairbanks Forecast Office, and even in some cases in southeast Alaska where there might be an area that's susceptible to a storm surge, the Juneau office would issue that.
Okay, and you have there's a website. The Anchorage Forecast Office has its own website.
That's correct.
Would you recommend people going to that particular website or maybe the regional website to get most of the warnings? And
it's going to
forecasts?
depend on where you live in the state. If you live up in the Seward Peninsula area, the Fairbanks Forecast Office is the office that provides service to your area. The Kuskokwim Delta down to Bristol Bay, that's done by the Anchorage Forecast Office, and anything down in southeast Alaska would be Juneau. But for simplicity, start with the Alaska region webpage and then go from there. Just simply use weather.gov and click over the area that you're interested in, and it'll direct you directly to the forecast office that provides your service.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for coming in and talking about coastal storm surges. Hopefully no one has to be involved in that, but if it does happen, if it's not if, when it happens, that they're prepared. And Thank you for coming in and talking about that today.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me on.
And thank you for joining us here in Alaska Weather Facts. Until next time.
Welcome back. Well, as the storm approaches tomorrow, look for winds becoming southeast, increasing 25 to 30 knots. Strongest here on the south coast, east at about 20 up to the north. Lincoln Island Glacier Bay, pretty light tomorrow. In fact, probably becoming variable in the afternoon hours, no more than 10 knots. Southeast coming up to 15, central inside waters, and the southern areas, 25 knots. Then front moves through and everything turns west or west-southwest, 15 to 20 knots here along the coast, even lighter back up on the north coast. Southwesterlies 10 to 15 knots across all of the inside channels. Prince William Sound tomorrow, variable winds, light and variable. Same thing for the central Gulf Coast. Northwesterlies 10 to maybe 20 knots across the Barren Islands, diminishing back to 10 knots there as you get into Kamishak Bay. And west-southwesterlies 10 to 15 for the Kodiak Island zone. Except Shelikof Strait be predominantly west or west-southwest. Cook Inlet, light westerlies. And then for Monday, northwest here picking up to about 15 knots, Prince William Sound. Higher gusts developing, especially through Passage Canal in the afternoon. Northwest 20 for the central Gulf Coast, and 25 knot winds pretty likely here for the Barren Islands. West 15 for Kamishak Bay. West 20 knots here for the east side of Kodiak Island. Southwest 20 for Shelikof Strait. And still westerly at about 10 for most of Cook Inlet. And for Bristol Bay tomorrow, northwest 20. And that'll extend down southwest of Kodiak Island, but drop back to about 15 knots here for the Alaska Peninsula. And seas running 5 to 6 feet. And then on Monday, west-southwest winds coming up to 20 knots here into Bristol Bay, about 15 knots on the Bering Sea side of the peninsula. Light northwest winds here on the Pacific side, but up to about 15 knots, and then tending to become more westerly in the afternoon for the area southwest of Sitkinak. And out in the Aleutians, pretty light winds coming up tomorrow, 10 to 15 knots here from Atka all the way up to Unalaska from mostly the north or north-northwest. High pressure right in this area, so light variable winds here for AKwx on out to the west, and then kind of a south-southwesterly breeze, 10 to 15 to the west. And for, am I still on? Anyway, for Monday, southwest 10 to 15 and west-southwest 10 to 15 for the remainder of the Aleutians. And then for Sunday, west-southwest winds as high as 25 knots coming into the northern Bering Sea and the St. Matthew Island marine area there, and 20 knot winds down possibly here, well, the areas north of Nunivak Island and also up across St. Lawrence Island. Lighter northwest winds across Kuskokwim Bay, seas at about 4 feet. For the Pribilofs, westerlies at 15 with 5-foot seas. And then for the Monday outlook, southwest 20 knots for the Pribilofs, increasing to 25 knots south of Nunivak Island, right up into Kuskokwim Bay there. Seas building as high as 10 feet possibly, and about 7 feet for the Pribilofs. Southwest 20, 7-foot seas for the northern Bering Sea in that St. Matthew Island zone, but only at about 15 knots here for the coast, and northwest 10 there for St. Lawrence Island, the seas running at about 3 feet. And up along the Arctic coast, southwesterlies possibly as high as 25 knots at times during the day tomorrow. 20 knots back to the western Capes there, but only 10 knots from Tin City here on up to Point Hope. East side, southwest 15 becoming west at 10 toward Demarcation Point. And then those winds mostly northwest here, 15 to 20 knots, possibly as high as 25 knots there for the western zone. Northwest 20 from Wales to Cape Lisburne, or Point Hope in that area. But again, lighter winds on the east side there, west-southwest at 15. And then for tonight, showers almost end here over the southeast coast, but the next batch of moisture coming right up toward the coastline toward morning or late tonight, lingering showers here over the southeast interior, maybe back into Prince William Sound, but generally mostly clear and pretty chilly night again. Possibly you could see some light frost again in the East Anchorage area, and definitely up where the frost advisory is going for the Fairbanks area. And then surge of moisture, I should say another surge of moisture, moves on to the northwest coast, and then those weaken as they push eastward and southeastward. Just some sprinkles down across Norton Sound. Pretty clear over the Bristol Bay area, becoming clear Kodiak Island, and no change out in the Aleutians. Variable clouds and fog both tonight, tomorrow, and Monday as well. Otherwise, another trough could be a little stronger coming onto the northwest coast up here, or the central and western Arctic coast, with snow, just some scattered isolated rain or snow showers with this eastern trough, a little more significant here back to the west, but nothing too terribly heavy. More of a drizzle, low cloud, fog type of condition here spreading into the Yukon Delta and Nunivak Island. The main warm front back out through here. Good westerly flow will push this system eastward, so this area of rain will probably make landfall tomorrow night or late tomorrow night on the northwest coast here, and then move right on in on Monday. Otherwise, sunshine, Kodiak Island, right up into south central Alaska. Even the central and eastern Tanana Valley should see a lot of sunshine with some breaks behind this trough. Wet, periods of rain, possibly moderate to heavy at times to the southeast coast, and those winds could gust as high as 40, 45 miles an hour in advance of that front, mainly along the central and south coast. And then that'll change over to showers tomorrow night, but the trough hanging off the coast probably won't end until.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.